I just can't wait for an announcement of Planet Coaster 2. Where is it? In this video we are going to discuss 5 things that I think are desperate to be in a successor from this wonderful game. So lately I've been playing Park Beyond a little bit in the beta, and I thought this reminded me of a game that I was craving for a long time, and it's been 2 years actually that we've talked about a potential Planet Coaster 2. I couldn't believe my eyes when I was looking at the old video. 2 years of missing things, I guess. If you want to see that old video, there are 7 points in there which still are great, and none of them will make it in today's video. These are 5 brand new points. So stick with me if you want to know that, and at the end of the video we are going to discuss how likely it actually is to have an announcement soon. I have actually 2 kind of time frames in my mind where it would be. So yeah, if you want to know why and why I think the chances are pretty good, stick with me, but let's get going with the first point. Alright, we're gonna go with Backstage Management. Now hear me out, this point is rather important. Today's video will focus a lot more on the playability and the casual aspect of the game. So maybe you're sitting in front of your screen now screaming at me, what the hell is Backstage with casual? Well, you know, one of the big weakness point, or the biggest weakness of Planet Coaster 1 is definitely the management aspect. So with a backstage management or delivery management, just as in Parkitect for example, where you have to do some waste management, all that kind of stuff, would add a lot to the longevity of the management. So just imagine you have several blocks that you can attach to a certain building, just such like a delivery point, waste management point, staff entrance points, and you have to plot these things to a certain direction. They can be white boxes or anything, just make sure that they are somewhat connected to either like a card or a facility manager or whatever who has to join there, and then we can theme them up ourselves. That would be amazing, and as you can see on this image from Disneyland actually, you can see how much is going on behind the buildings that you do see. So this is a huge part of a theme park management game, and I would love to see that, as I said, maybe easy as blocks or small facilities, but yeah, I think that's very important. So let's go into a second point that goes very well together with this one, and it's pathing. Now, this is the inevitable one, this is the obvious one. I kind of ignored that in the last video because it was too obvious, but I think speaking about pathing is not only a completely overhauled path editor, it also means the integration of new path systems. So we do have stuff pathing in Planet Zoo, for example, but we still don't have one-way pathing. And imagine, even a game like Roller Coaster Tycoon had that, with these like little barriers that could, block the road into one direction. They are super handy when it comes to guest flow management, to avoid congestions and stuff like that. We would need not only an overhauled tool, but also an overhauled management of pathing by having these elements like one-way lanes and maybe also some roping and stuff to, there's also a chance to enable and disable, for example, certain regions of a queue. So for example, having that as like an additional path layer that can be added when the traffic is raising and more people are in and higher crowds and stuff like that. I think this would be a highly beneficial thing for the game, and I would really love to see that. And just look at how amazing this plaza over here, this pathing looks. I know this is a sad image, but it's not a sad topic. Let's speak about weather, because what else could be in for management than weather? Because weather has a huge impact, not only to the rides and, the longevity of a ride or whatever, but also on how the guests are moving, how the park can be opened, and the influences of weather have not been really existent, for example, in Planet Zoo, other than it does look good and it's warm or cold. But I think weather can have a huge influence onto not only how the people behave with rides. Again, Roller Coaster Tycoon is a brilliant example. When there was rain, people were not likely to go on attractions that are outside. So for example, the roller coasters, and they were very much more likely to go into interior ones, like indoor ones, and for example, the spooky house or something like that. I would love to see a higher impact of weather. For me personally, if there is a successor, whenever it's coming, it has to have weather, but it's not about if there is weather. I think we have to speak about what impact does the weather have, and I highly hope that we can have seasons, so also have different seasons in terms of what you do in the park. So for example, in the winter season, as there are some attractions not even open, not even possible to be open, such as water attractions and log flumes and stuff like that, and also obviously coasters, or you have indoor coasters or whatnot. So that has a direct impact, and so maybe you can then kind of bring up your other attractions by having parades or festivals or something like that, or shows in this area. So just as all the theme parks nowadays do, with like Halloween specials, Winter Wonderland specials and whatnot. It's very famous by now. All the theme parks across the globe do that, and I would really love to see a higher impact of that, which also could go hand in hand with what I've talked about earlier with the Backstage Management. So you have completely different targets in the winter, which maybe you have to already order in the summertime, and if you forget about that, basically your winter time is doomed. Something like that would be good, and would be a brilliant element of weather, including, and that might be it as well, including having a high influence of the goods and the food and stuff that you offer, because obviously summer has a different taste than winter has, obviously just by what the people would demand, what they like, what they favor to eat or drink. So again, would be another element of what you have to order. Would be very cool to see that, but yeah, that's the weather. Number 4 is my personal favorite, and that is accessibility. We all have been building so much with ramps and ADA compliant things, and you know, having done elevators and all that kind of stuff. How about just having that in the game? Planet Coaster made a huge step towards a good, like a way better world with a brilliant and, as I think, very inclusive game, introducing gay couples and even like gay families, and with, you know, adopted kids and different, like basically all the different humans in there, what kind of gave this super colorful brilliant game, and the crowds make them really feel alive, even though they are comic-y. Not sure what they do with a new game, if they do so, if they stick to the comedy appeal, or if they go a more realistic way. Whatever they do, I really do hope that they go the way of introducing accessibility. And that means not only for the game itself, in terms of having, like, for example, ramps and you know, disabled elevators, for example, disabled entrances, and also parking, as you can see over here. That would be huge. But also in terms of the game itself, you know, make the game as accessible as possible, with the different things that you can do. Maybe, you know, team up with special effect and stuff like that. You know, maybe have like an audio guide for the game. Things like that, I think, in the year 2023 are very much not only appreciated but needed to make games even more inclusive, and, you know, open up for a huge community. And we all know that we have a huge community of people of all kinds of colors and abilities and talents and everything that goes in line with that. So that would be amazing, and if that would go hand in hand also with like a benefit of the game, so the more accessible your park is, the better obviously it goes. Really would love to see that. I really would love to see different kinds of elevators, different kind of ramps, different kind of as I've just said, options to make the park overall accessible. That would be absolutely phenomenal. I would love that. And that's my number 4. But now let's go over to number 5. It is the one I wanted to avoid, but I just cannot. After having played Park Beyond, and not, you know, I don't want to talk about Park Beyond. It's a different game. They have a different target, all the good. But your comments made me do this video. Your comments made me do specifically this point. Why? Well, that's obvious. Many of you have complained about my comparison, stating that Planet Coaster wasn't realistic. Many of you have told me to look at No Limits 2. I have obviously looked at No Limits 2, and No Limits 2 in my book is not a coaster theme park game. It is a coaster designer. Not more, not less. It's the best coaster designer out there, but it's not a game. It's not a game. It's not like a full-fledged game. Why do I say that? Well, because I still believe that the coaster builder needs to have huge improvements. That means especially the smoothness of the coaster, the way how the camera works. I know that we had a lot of issues with the camera position, where it is positioned on the coaster in terms of like a very in programming wise, because it, you know, it didn't allow for smooth rides and stuff, and then people have to come up with crazy 4-meter methods. And speaking of accessibility in the previous point, in terms of accessibility in order to make great coasters, that was not a great game. You had to be a very much professional coaster builder in Planet Coaster in order to achieve great coasters. That has to be way more simple and give the people a lot more control over what they're doing, with either go to a fully node-based coaster builder or just improve the system that we have in the game dramatically, because it had its strengths, especially for people who are not as talented, but then again it just lacked the quality of those things by smoothness and stuff like that. However, I really do think it needs a huge overhaul, especially when it comes to how the coasters are set together. What I mean by that is pretty simple. Planet Coaster had a huge variety of coasters and coaster types, and had a huge variety of different elements of rides. What they didn't have is a better management and organization of that, because the list of coasters just was increased by every element they implemented. But then we had like 6 different types of B&M steel coasters, and all of them were B&Ms in a way, but they separated them to the different coaster types they were in terms of the car or whatnot. And only late into the game they made the coaster car switch option, which was already a step into the right direction. But it would be way much more simple to just have coaster types, like track types and train types. That would be much easier, because then you could have a track type with different track options and different coaster trains on top of that one, which also would solve a huge issue with the amount of different camera positions, angles, blah blah blah. It would be way more easy programming wise, I guess, but also in terms of how the game works with the coasters. Yeah, I rambled enough about this. The point is very obvious. The coaster builder has to receive a huge improvement, but I think it will, and I can't wait for if it is there. And this is the question. Is Planet Coaster 2 coming? How likely is it? What has changed since the last video we made? Let's talk about that. Alright, so how likely is it that we will get a Planet Coaster 2, and with that, how likely is it that we have at least one of those 5 points realized? So I'm not going to talk about the financial report again, but if you are interested into the full financial report of Planet Zoo and Frontier and blah blah in general, click that link I'm going to put to the top right if I remember. It's on my channel. I delve deep into it, which has a lot of verified and reasonable hints to why it is very likely to get a new Planet game. Now I'm really pronouncing the planet here, and the emphasis has to be on the planet, because we don't know for sure if it's going to be Planet Coaster 2. However, there are a couple of things we know, and this is A, Frontier is going to release a new own IP game in their own franchise, which is very likely to be in the Planet franchise. Frontier has licensed basically everything that you can imagine in the Planet area after they have made a decision that the Planet brand will live on. And it makes sense. It's their best-selling game franchise, even better than Jurassic franchise, and that's that. Now, the only thing we can do at this point, because there is no new evidence, is, well, we can look at what types of people they are looking for in terms of devs, and what types of people have joined Frontier, and unfortunately also which have left Frontier. So we know that, for example, Sam Denny, who was the lead, one of the lead designers and the coaster nerd of Planet Coaster 1, has left Frontier already quite a while ago. He moved on to another dev studio, and he's no longer at Frontier, alongside some others who have been developing Planet Coaster 1. So that is obviously not a good sign, but it's also, in terms of how the industry works, it's not a deal breaker. It's very unfortunate, because Sam Denny is a great person, and he also had a huge influence on how Planet Coaster 1 was developed. But speaking of the fact that I guess this game has been in development for quite a long time, if it is Planet Coaster 2, then it might make sense that he had already had some influence on that, which is good. Now, going further into the future, how likely is it that Frontier is going to make another game? So for that, you have to imagine, this is something I haven't spoken about in the past, but you have to imagine when a decision is made to create a certain game. It's not made last year, and it's not made the year before, and it's not even made the year before that. It's made maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So that means the year before pandemic, or even earlier than that. So if they have decided to go on for a new game, and this might be during the times where we got some leaks, and I'm not going to, refresh them again, because they're so old that none of these things are accurate anymore. But at least we know that Planet Coaster was a thing at this point, and we know that this leak was legit. However, This is almost 5 years ago, and the world has changed, so has Frontier. However, I think there's a good reason to think that it still is Planet Coaster 2, despite the fact they may have not had an agreement with Disney or so, and the sole reason for that is business. Planet Coaster was a great selling game, and the console edition did well too. Planet Coaster as a franchise is very successful and had a lot of sales. It generates even sales today. It has a stable financial situation. So does Planet Zoo, but Planet Zoo even far outdone this. Planet Zoo is the best selling game they have in their portfolio, and it's yet another Planet game. So obviously, another introduction into the Planet franchise is very likely because it's their best-selling franchise and they have to pay people and they have to give them money. So it might make sense that they go on a secure horse on that, in that sense, and go the secure way, which would be Planet Coaster 2, because we know that there's a huge fan base. We know that there's a huge lack of games. Park Beyond is also like a good game to have because it is kind of, in a way, it is competition, so this sparks interest into the genre, which is good always. And we do not have to forget that we are living in the year 2023, which marks already 7 years between the first game and maybe another one. But we can all agree on the fact that it's very unlikely it's going to be released this year because we would have had already an announcement. This is the last point I want to talk about. When would there be an announcement? Well, the first moment that we could have had, and that was the earliest I thought could happen, was April of this year. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Frontier always releases their November releases in this time of the year. So April, very early May is the time normally when a game is announced, and then they develop that over the summer, and then it's going to be presented at Gamescom, and then at the end of the year it's going to be released. You know, that's the normal thing. That's the easiest way to get all the important check marks in your books where you have to, you know, do the marketing and stuff. That didn't happen. So the next moment is maybe not next year April, even though I have a feeling that realistically it's gonna be next April, meaning it's November 2024, which is a long time. Yeah, but I think this is the most realistic. However, being a bit more optimistic and hopeful, it could also be Gamescom. So we have to keep our eyes open if Frontier is going to go to Gamescom. If they announce to go to Gamescom and they have a booth over there, I think the chances do increase significantly, because this would actually mean that there is something to present, and they don't really have anything big at the moment, so which would justify a bigger booth. I'm not sure if the Jurassic Park 30th anniversary would be enough, and they already confirmed that the DLC is even not going to be about the anniversary, so even less sense of that. So yeah, there's unfortunately not that much news value in these things because they are just like kind of soft facts in a way, but I think chances are good that the next Planet game is going to be Planet Coaster 2, and again the timeline might be next year. I mean, the release is most definitely next year, but the announcement, who knows, maybe at Gamescom. That would be the earliest possible. I'm here to wish for that, but what do you think, guys? Did I miss anything? Is there some information I missed which is already out there and I just totally didn't see? Whatever, let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know what your 5 most important points would be. Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree? Why do you disagree? Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to be kept in the loop, yeah, just subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna try to do everything I can to catch up on the news if there are any. Until then, have a good time, stay safe, and goodbye.